There's a sound, a feeling you only get in a stadium. It's that moment when a goal is scored and tens of thousands of individual voices just merge. They become one single deafening roar. It's electric, right? But what if that incredible unified voice? What if it could be used for something more than just cheering on a team? What if it could be used to challenge a state? So you're looking at this image and you see a banner, but it's so much more than that. This is a declaration, and it forces us to ask a really provocative question. What happens when the most powerful opposition in a nation isn't found in its parliament or among activists, but right here, in the stands of a football stadium? Right, so how does this happen? How does a place for sports turn into a political battleground? Well, to get to the bottom of it, you have to understand the groups at the very heart of this, the ultras. We need to look at who they are and what makes their passion for a game explode into raw political power. Okay, so what exactly are ultras? First things first, you can just throw out any image you have of a casual fan. That's not what this is. We're talking about highly organized, incredibly disciplined groups. For them, being a fan isn't a hobby. It's a way of life. They're the ones behind those absolutely jaw-dropping visual displays you see, the ones called tifos. You know, these massive, choreographed spectacles with banners and smoke that cover an entire section of a stadium. Their whole identity is built on this shared, fierce passion. And that intensity, well, it often puts them on a collision course with the authorities. And it's really important to make a key distinction here, one that's highlighted in a Merab report on Moroccan football fans. Ultras are not the same thing as hooligans. You see, hooliganism is usually about spontaneous, often random violence. But for the ultras, the main goal is creative expression. It's about putting on an incredible show of support for their club. The spectacle itself is the point, not the fight. So the big question is, why? Why do these fan groups get so political? Well, just try to put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine you're young, you don't have great job prospects, your educational opportunities are bleak. And on top of all that, you're living under an authoritarian government that shuts down any and all public space for dissent. Where do you go to be heard? For so many, the stadium becomes the only place left. It's the last free public square, a kind of sanctuary where there's safety in numbers and real freedom in that collective roar. And this quote from a Moroccan youth activist cited in a Merab report by Christopher J. Cox, it hits the nail on the head. It's not about football anymore, is it? It's about finding the one place where a generation that's been made to feel powerless can suddenly feel in charge, where they can finally, freely, say what they really think. So that feeling of empowerment, that's the seed. But it's still a huge leap from cheering for a football team to becoming a genuine political force. How does that happen? Well, it turns out there's a kind of predictable and often very dangerous chain reaction. And interestingly, according to research from Connor Teacher-Zach on Egyptian ultras, it's often the state that lights the fuse. It starts simple enough. The ultras just want some autonomy in their own space, in the stands. But then the state police come in and crack down hard to enforce control. And that's the trigger. Because now, this shared struggle against a common enemy creates this incredible bond, this deep sense of solidarity. All of a sudden, their identity isn't just about supporting their club anymore. It becomes about being anti-authority. And once that identity shifts, everything else follows. The chants start to evolve. The songs change their tune, literally. The roar of the crowd, it begins to carry a very, very different message. It's no longer just about taunting a rival team. Now, it's taking aim at the government, at the police, at all the injustices they face the moment they step outside the stadium. Yeah, and we're not talking about subtle metaphors here. This is raw. Take this chant from the Hilala boys in Morocco, which was cited in that same Merab report. It's just so direct. It's the perfect example of that shift we're talking about, from simple sports taunts to full-on political protest. They're using the only platform they have to speak truth directly to power. This whole evolution, from fan chant to political anthem, it all came to a head in the most dramatic way possible in Egypt. We're talking about 2011, the Arab Spring. The ultras there didn't just chant against the state, they took it on, head first. They became a central fighting force in a full-blown revolution. You see, when the revolution exploded in Tahrir Square, one group was uniquely, almost perfectly prepared for the street battles that were about to happen: the ultras. Think about it. Their years and years of clashing with riot police at football matches, it had basically been one long, unintentional training exercise for exactly this moment. They had a very specific skill set, one they've been honing for years in the stadium. First, they had organization and discipline. You don't create those massive tifos without it. Second, they had years of real-world experience fighting the exact same police forces they were now facing in the square. And maybe most importantly, they brought this collective, absolutely fearless energy that just spread like wildfire through the other protesters. And this isn't just speculation. Research published in Palm Studies flat out confirms how crucial they were. During that infamous Battle of the Camel, it was the ultras who formed the front lines, shielding the other protesters and fighting back. They were absolutely instrumental. But this story doesn't have a happy ending. After the revolution, the state struck back hard. In 2012, in what many see as a coordinated retaliatory attack, 72 Al-Ahly fans were killed in the Port-Said Stadium massacre. And just a year later, the very same ultra groups that had been hailed as heroes of the revolution were officially banned and labeled as terrorist organizations. For their role, for their power, they paid the ultimate price. Okay, so let's zoom out, because the tragic story of Egypt's ultras, it reveals something universal about power and about public space. The fight we see happening inside these stadiums, it's really just a smaller version of a much, much bigger struggle for freedom and the right to speak. When you get right down to it, the struggle for control of the stadium isn't about the stadium at all. It's a fight for public space itself. Who owns it? Who gets to control what's said there? Who gets to speak freely? It's about identity. It's about the fundamental right for people to gather and have a voice. It is never, ever just about football. And here's a strange paradox in all of this. The same state pressure that turns these groups political can also weirdly unite them. As Christopher Cox notes in his Mirror report, once the state became the common enemy, something amazing happened. Rival ultras in Morocco actually started sharing their songs, their strategies. Suddenly, the fight against the government was way more important than their age-old club rivalries. And all of this leaves us with one last, really critical question. If you close every other door for expression, if you shut down every sanctioned way for people to voice their dissent and frustration, where does all that pressure go? Where does a whole generation's anger end up? It goes right back into the stands, back into the crowd. Because in the end, you have to realize that the collective energy that can challenge a state, it's the exact same energy that expresses a nation's purest joy. The passion is identical. The unity feels the same. The roar sounds the same. It all just depends on what or who they're roaring for.